Hi BookTube, and welcome to a new video. This is a tag video. This is the rapid fire tag which I saw on the channel of those fine upstanding chaps, the Codex Cantina. I'll post a link to their video along with the original video. Now I'm sure I've done this before, but when I've had a look at the questions, some of them seem different, so I don't know if I have done this before. This is just a slightly different take on the concept, but basically it's either ors and it's rapid fire. This video will not last too long. I'm not going to go into great detail apart from maybe on a couple of them. Okay, so prompt 1, ebook or physical book? Personally, physical book. I have nothing against ebooks, just I personally find it very difficult to read on a screen. I would only buy an ebook if it was A, exclusively ebook, or B, cheaper, as turned out to be the case during the lockdown. Obviously ebooks quite a good way of getting your new books, and I bought Dan Zahavi's what's it called, but in a basic introduction to phenomenology, and very good it was too, and it was about £10 cheaper on ebook than to have the hard copy. Paperback or hardback, I really have no preference. I have, because I've started to order a lot more new releases before they're available, I am reading more hardbacks because that's how they are arriving, but it's not a preference, it's just how it goes. Online or in-store book shopping, both. Trilogies or series, neither. Say what you have to say in one book. A book you want everyone to read. Well, I find this really hard because with fiction it's really hard to recommend something that everybody is going to like, and with my particular tastes I'm aware that writers like David Markson and Ben Marcus are quite niche audiences, so I couldn't, in all honesty, recommend them universally. So I'm going to go with something non-fiction, although you might think this is fiction. This is Plato's Phaedo, which is the death of Socrates, but also introduces us to his theory of forms, which also appeared in the Republic. But a lot of people don't like Plato's Republic because it's sort of proto-fascist, they think. Recommend an underrated book. This is really hard because I don't really have a concept of books being underrated because I don't really follow what's popular and what isn't. I have a concept of, again, niche writers. Is that the same as being underrated? No. The writer. A lot of my favourite books are by writers that just aren't that well known. But that doesn't make them underrated. That just makes them not well known. So I'm going to say, what am I going to say? David Markson. This is not a novel and other novels. The last book you finished is The Hall of the Singing Caryatids by Victor Pelevin, a Russian sci-fi writer with Buddhist leanings. Only 800 pages. Very good it was too. I haven't had a chance to review it. I'll do that in my weekly wrap-up. The last book you bought, well, funny enough, it was that. I have got about 3 or 4 books arriving, hopefully this week, breaking my own embargo. And for the life of me, I can't remember what they are. That's just the way I roll. So technically, they were the last books I bought, but since I can't remember them. The last weird thing you've used as a bookmark, well, it's not that weird. It's a bus ticket, in the sense that I know a lot of people use bus tickets as a bookmark, but mine, this is going to be more familiar to people who live in London, and if you go back to probably the 1980s, I think they were probably phased out by then, when you used to have conductors on buses, and they had that sort of thing that, you pay your fare, and they, I don't even know what you call it, some sort of meter, and it spat out a sort of, flimsy paper, sort of rice paper ticket. And occasionally these turn up in old books of mine because I use them as bookmarks, but they are an endangered species. Used books, yes or no? Yeah, absolutely, as long as they're in decent condition. Top 3 favourite genres? None. Borrow or buy? Well, I don't have the opportunity to borrow because no one I know reads the sort of stuff I do, so buy. Characters or plot? Neither. I prefer voice to characters, and plot, even as a writer I find the concept of plot difficult to describe. Do we just mean storyline? in which case I'm completely uninterested in that in books I read. To me though, plot really is everything about a novel. If someone asks you to describe a novel, you don't just give the story, you'll give a little colour of the setting and the character. To me, that is the plot. So I don't really understand this question. Long or short books? Well, the normal answer to that is it doesn't matter. But actually, I recently discovered that it does in my case. So, Exhibit A, Duck's Newburyport by Lucy Ellman. So last week, I picked this back up after a hiatus. Made good progress, knocked off about 130 pages or something like that. No, 140 pages, and was very pleased with myself. But I have if I'm committed to a book this length, it's going to take me, even at that rate, it'll take me 4 or 5 weeks to finish it. And psychologically, I can't manage that. I have to have other reading input. So, this week, for example, we're now, today, Wednesday. I haven't read any pages of this book, despite the momentum I built up last week. Instead, I've been reading Dennis Johnson. I read that over the weekend. I read some non-fiction. That's just the way my brain seems to work. But of course, each other book you pick up while you're supposed to be reading books like this just delays this even further. So it's not going to be 5 or 6 weeks at the current rate. So I have to say shorter books rather than longer, even though it pains me to say it, because this is a great book. There's nothing wrong with it, but just its length is stymieing me getting through it in good order. Long or short chapters, I have no preference. It's very rare that sort of chapter breaks are that formally important, unless it's to introduce another character or another point of view. It doesn't matter to me. Name the first 3 books you could think of. The Lost Children Archive by Valeria Luiselli, Milkman by Anna Burns, and Love, Another Thought Experiments by Sophie Ward. Books that make you laugh or cry. Well, none make me cry. Very few make me laugh. But one that did, I've only read it the once, is Carew by Steve Tessich. Which is just, there's a laugh on every page of its sort of complete failure of a human being as its main character, who's sort of tried to get this sort of Star Trek type movie made, but just hasn't got the wherewithal as he's trying to move through LA. It's very funny. Unfortunately, Steve Tessich died after this, so it's his one and only book. He was a film producer before that. I will say though, today shortlisted for the Women's Prize, Weather by Jenny Ophel. This has a lot of very funny laugh-out gags in it, but it's also a book with great stress and tension. Our world or fictional worlds? Our world, because for me reading is not about escape. For me reading is about engaging with our world, trying to understand it and our place in it and ourselves. And just ask yourself the question, if the world is so bad that you feel you need to escape from it, what does that say about the world you live in? Maybe you should focus on that. And brought to particular contrast with the COVID virus. I mean, I understand the need to escape, but I would always hope that at some point the escapees would come back and reflect upon what are the issues with our world that push them out to escape in the first place. Audiobooks, yes or no? I don't myself, but I have no problem with them. Some people don't regard reading an audiobook as reading. I don't feel like that. I don't drive, I don't go for runs, I don't have a treadmill, so I just would never have occasion to listen to them. And if I've got the space to read, i.e. I'm not watching something or getting some other sensory stimulus, I'm quite happy reading the book. I wouldn't sort of privilege an audiobook over reading it. So to me, an audiobook is really good for when you've got dead time, you're in motion doing something, but it's otherwise dead time. But I don't have much of that in my life, so I have no real need for audiobooks. Do you ever judge a book by its cover? No, don't be silly. Book to movie or book to TV adaptations? Neither, and I shall post the link to my rant on that very subject. A movie or TV show you prefer to its book? I refer my answer from the previous question. Series or standalones? Well, isn't this the same as trilogies or series? Neither. I refer the honourable viewer to my previous answer. So there you have it. Thanks very much. Until next time.